everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Early Bird Anime. I am Dan,
And I'm Meg.
and today we'll be delving into the depths of high school delinquency with a little show, anime, whatever you want to call it, called Cromartie High School. Secure those Ramblepants, lest there be wedgies. Meg, would you like to give us a little background of this anime?
Of course. So Cromartie High School is based off of a 17-volume manga series by an artist called Nonaka Eiji. The Japanese title is Sakigake Cromartie Koko, and Sakigake, it means like charge or like rush forward. The anime has 26 10-minute episodes, and it was produced by Production IG, which also did Eden of the East, which we discussed recently, and also worked on the End of Evangelion movie. The show ran from 2003 to 2004, and in 2004 it was also licensed in the US by ADV Films. There was also a live-action movie adaptation in 2005 by Yamaguchi Yudai, and if anyone is familiar with the author Natsume Soseki and Soseki's work 10 Nights of Dreams, there's a movie adaptation where each dream was taken by a different director, and Yamaguchi Yudai directed the 10th dream, which is the one with the pigs. If anyone is a fan, I recommend checking that out because it is bizarre.
How unfitting for a show of this caliber.
Oh yeah, definitely. So the anime is a parody of like juvenile delinquent, also called Yankee in Japan anime. Daniel, do you want to give a brief summary of the show?
I would, but first, since I represent the uncultured American audience, is Yankee some sort of like translation for like Yankee or
Yes.
like idiot American?
Well, I can't remember the exact thing, but yeah, it's a use of Yankee. It doesn't actually mean American, but it's just what they call, the high school delinquents who wear their hair in pompadours and hang out swinging bike irons around after school.
Japan was about to make an enemy of me again, so I have to ask, Anyway, okay, so here's the summary. Kamiyama Takashi is a good student who somehow ends up going to a high school filled entirely with delinquents. Despite finding himself surrounded by scary, bulky 16-year-olds who brag about all the fights and exploits they've gotten into, he somehow gets on with almost every single one of them and ascends to the ranks of the toughest guy in the school at one point. Cromartie High School makes up for its complete lack of teachers and, classwork by having students like a gorilla, a robot, and someone who vaguely resembles rock icon Freddy Mercury.
Vaguely?
Well, watch the show. They get into various hijinks, really weird scenarios that I would just call surreal, if anything. Example being one from a classmate who was kidnapped by a rival school, where everyone has the same song stuck in their head, but no one knows what the title is, and everyone at the end has like a long chorus of them just humming it. Meg, what did you think of Cromartie High?
I thought it was really funny.
As did I.
It's pretty short. It's not too hard to get through. I really like that kind of weird, surrealist humor, and also the fact that you have these super tough guys who are doing completely not tough guy things, stereotypically speaking. I think that's something I really appreciate in terms of my sense of humor, and it's one of the reasons why I really liked the movie Pulp Fiction. I know I talk about Tarantino quite a lot on this show, but part of what I really liked about that movie was that you had these character types, like these mob boss guys, these hitmen, who, there's this whole expectation in your head built up about what kind of people they are, and then they go and they just do completely silly, mundane things like normal people. And that's really similar to what Cromartie High School does. You have these delinquents who, act all tough, and you have this set of expectations, and then they're making comments like, oh, I'll stab you with my strawberry short blade. Or, you have one guy who is really angry and violent in school, but then when he goes home, He's a moderator on a fan site for the silly little comedy show that they like, and he's super polite on the internet.
He's got netiquette, I believe, is what he says.
I believe that is what he said.
I absolutely. I think you might have been the one who showed me this show before.
It was, yeah.
And I'd say one of the big standout characters from the show is the character who looks like Freddie Mercury, who they dub Freddy in, I think, the Japanese version. They just call him Freddy. But I'd seen pictures of him because one of my favorite YouTubers, Rabas, used to use a likeness of Freddy for his like flags and various playthroughs of Kerbal Space Program or whatnot. I think it was his Twitter and Twitch handle of him licking a lollipop. Yeah.
Oh,
actually.
yeah.
He has since not, but you could probably find old videos of Freddy being on like a flag or on a spaceship or something. But either way, yeah, like you said, I really like the surreal, weird humor of it. And I think particularly to me, when I first watched it, I thought of it almost like a parody of like shonen shows, because personally I fell off anime, I should say. It's Meg's reason why I'm getting back into it, perhaps. But I used to not really... for a while, I fell off of it because I was sort of bored. And mostly, I think, because all the shows that were on TV, because I was a very dedicated TV watcher in my youth. All the anime that I saw on television was usually the fighty sort of stuff. And I liked some of it. You know, I liked Rurouni Kenshin, Yu Yu Hakusho. I liked Dragon Ball. And then after a while, I started to get really bored of it and just sort of, like, it lacked any real character for me. And then you get a show like Cromartie High School where it's sort of, you come into the first episode, maybe not, if you didn't watch the intro, or, you know, whatever, you think, oh, this is a show about a kid who just went to a really tough school. He's going to have to probably fight his way out. And in the first episode, he drops a pencil and a guy eats it, and then he gives the guy more pencils, and then the guy eats all the pencils, and his reaction is, oh, that's not healthy. That
was my favorite scene.
I think for me, it's funny to me because I like weird humor, but I think it's weird humor done right because it's not random. I think you could argue that a lot of it is set up pretty well. The visual gags, it's a visual gag, so you don't really need to set up necessarily a visual gag, I think. But you don't just have characters doing something for no reason. They'll set something up, and then it'll come back around. Do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean. I think there are definitely some times where there were little random bits that didn't really make sense.
Yeah.
For example, there was like this simplified drawing of an old man that would appear like overlaid in the sky every few scenes. And that was never explained. You know, no one ever reacted to it. Or occasionally in the background of a shot, you would be able to see some like weird little purple creature wriggling around in the trash can. Never explained.
That's
or
true.
There was one scene where these two characters were talking in a cafe, and it cuts to one character, and then it cuts back to the other character, and that character is holding like a gigantic glass of water, and then it's back to normal the next time you see it.
There's definitely that, but I think because it's not the main focus. Like, randomness is not the main focus of their humor.
Yes.
I think that if you throw in a couple weird random things, it's funny because, and I'm no professor of comedy, but I was thinking about this before we got on to talk. Is that comedy is sort of playing with your expectations of what you think is going to happen. You know, you see a man walking, and you see a pole in front of him. You think, okay, maybe he's going to walk into a pole. But then maybe, this is not a good comedy joke by any means, but no one steal this joke regardless. But maybe instead of walking into a pole, the guy collapses right before the pole. He reaches the pole, or someone kicks him in the nuts.
He gets to the pole, walks around it, and then a giant hammer comes down out of the sky and hits him on the head.
Or maybe the pole walks into him.
Maybe.
I don't know. It's weird. This is not a very good example, and I regret making it already. But the thing is, you play with expectations.
Yeah.
And some people take that as, oh, well, if I just have characters saying dumb stuff out of context or just random stuff happening, it'll be funny. And it can be very jarring at times if you don't do it right. And this show, I think, it borders on being jarring, but it's not. It's never, I don't think, jarring because it knows it's silly, it knows it's weird, but it's never trying to be like, what about this? It's always like, no, we gotta do this. It's weird to think that this show keeps within its limits of weirdness.
Yeah, it all feels pretty light.
I think one of the best aspects of the show is how everyone looks. The art, particularly, I guess we always say art style in shows. We'll have to find a new thing to talk about eventually, I'm sure. But
it's important.
Everyone looks so tough, and like it's really like the shading on their like the shadow lines are like sometimes if it's a profile, one side of the face is all blackened down, the other side's like has the light on
the
it.
hatched lines for the shadows, and everyone's face is like really chiseled out and masculine.
Yeah. And then you play around with, I guess, those characters' appearances. Like you said, Yankees, if I'm pronouncing that right, they have this very specific look to them, like you said. Like, almost like the big pomps.
Mm-hmm.
And certain hairstyles to denote that, okay, this kid's a street tough, I better stay away. You got a kid with a purple mohawk, but the mohawk almost has a life of its own. It flops and flips around, and sometimes it does a little whirly bird propeller. Or you have one guy in the intro who has like a big afro and just keeps getting bigger and bigger.
Until it fills the whole screen.
Yeah, or one guy has giant nose hairs that seem to be moving around. And then some characters who notice it, their nose hairs start to fly out. Although I don't know if nose hairs is a denotation of toughness. It's more of like, you probably need a pair of scissors in your life.
Yeah, probably.
But the show, it's just fun. I think that's all it is. It's almost like Saint Young Men. I wouldn't call it a slice of life.
Saint Young Men, by the way, is
Jesus and Buddha anime.
Living together as roommates as they vacation in Japan.
Yeah, I mean that one's great too. I think for the same reasons. It's got weird humor in it, but it never is going too far.
Yeah. I also really liked how it's kind of that standard setup of, entering a new school, and this kid is kind of out of place for reasons that you have to read the manga to find out, apparently. But you don't really see him getting bullied or pushed around or anything by any of the other characters. Daniel mentioned this when he was giving the brief summary, but he pretty immediately makes good friends with the guy with the purple mohawk, and you see him throughout the series just getting along with everybody for the most part,
Yeah. I can't even remember certain things. Like, I can't even remember how one guy who I know started off as an enemy somehow became an ally. I can't even remember because it's so far gone after a while.
Right. You would think that as the one non-delinquent guy in the school, he would get picked on a little bit, but no, everyone's just pretty chill with him, and he helps them figure out things that they're too stupid to think of. At one point, Daniel mentioned this as well, he accidentally becomes like the biggest boss in Japan. They have like this national competition where all of the delinquents from all of the delinquent schools gather in the Tokyo Dome, and the announcer goes, all right, well, blah, 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 commencing this competition. True or false, yogurt is made with milk. And everyone just gets thrown into chaos. Like, well, we were never told we were going to need to actually, like, think about something. And so they're all crowding over to one section, and then then the announcer goes, okay, the answer is true. And you just get a shot of everybody standing over on the side that you went to pick false, and just Kamiyama, the main character, standing all by himself in
the truth category.
In the truth category. And that's how he became the biggest boss in Japan in one round. Yeah. I laughed a lot at that scene.
Yeah. I think if we get to the first episode, I don't know if we'll do a general summary of a specific episode, but it starts off with Kamiyama's writing to his mother a lot, and saying, like, dear mother, I've gone to Cromartie High School and I hear it's really tough. And every once in a while it'll come back, so it sort of doesn't have like an underlining story, but it has like these elements where it's like, okay, I can get behind this to keep you rooted in reality. It helps it from going off the deep end, I think, with that. I'm absolutely fine with them going crazy. At one point, you meet a classmate of theirs who is a robot.
Oh, yes.
And no one brings up the fact that he's a robot. And they take him to the doctor's office in one episode, but it's like a guy like a PC Richards or something. And he's like, what are you talking about? What is he... He's using such weird words for me, like new battery and replacement. And everyone's like, yeah, I don't know, man.
Yeah, the robot's like, wait, this doesn't seem like a doctor's to me. So it's funny because even he doesn't really seem to acknowledge that he's a robot. You kind of wonder how much of this is in the main characters' heads and how much of it is actually real.
Yeah.
Until you get to a point where they start like actually physically dismantling him and putting him back together in different
drain
things.
His memory.
Yeah.
Or how his little brother is essentially a cell phone after a while.
Oh, yeah.
Little Mekazawa is that character.
Mekazawa. And then Betazawa.
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 They're all great.
Yeah, it had such a fun variety of characters.
Yeah.
Like you had this one guy who is the boss of the first years, but
Yeah, there's a whole hierarchy in
he
the school.
suffered from crippling motion sickness,
Yeah.
and he's afraid to tell anybody about it because it'll damage his reputation. Or you have the boss of one of the rival schools who is super into comedy and he just dreams
Yeah.
of becoming a great comedian.
It's not that he's into comedy, it's that he examines it and he tries to pinpoint all the... I related to that guy a lot because he overthought a lot of aspects about like what made something funny. And I do that all the time. I think now that we do stuff about reviewing shows or whatever, we're doing reviewing movies.
Right.
I'm in that position where I'm like, but why is this funny? There's a whole episode where he wants Kamiyama to be part of his comedy duo that he wants to make. And then he finds out that Kamiyama likes this show that he thinks is super unfunny and stupid.
A really popular show.
Yeah, a really popular show. He's like, I've got to really hunker down and watch this if it is as funny as it is. And he gets to a scene where he's like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever watched. But I should remain objective because perhaps jumping to conclusions without letting the joke have its payoff, that is just as unfair as someone, it gets a little bit too into it all. And I still sympathize with him because he watches this show to the end and buys all the merchandise, although I don't buy if I don't like something, I'm not going to buy anything from it. But he watches the show all the way through. I was like, I hated it. It's bad.
Yeah, he watches through the whole thing, and yet at the end he's still just like flipping tables how bad he thinks it is.
Yeah.
But he is dedicated.
He's dedicated. That's what it takes to be a true comedian.
Oh yes.
I personally think. Really, there's not much to say about the show in general. I will say that I think the length of the episodes, did you say 10 minutes longer each one about?
Yep, about that.
Yeah, I think that's also good. And I bring this up every once in a while. Sometimes I like the length of anime more than what a Western show would do. Like this show, like you said, is 26 episodes. And that's it. It doesn't try to keep pushing the boundaries. I probably wouldn't like the show as much if they made a bunch of episodes and we're still making them up until this year or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You don't really see that, I think, in the West with at least cartoons. Definitely with TV shows, sometimes you see people pushing it. And I just like it. It's short, it's easy to get into, it's sort of what I value in watching shows, movies, or whatever nowadays, because people get busy. You just want to sit down and relax and do something, get away from your life. This is a perfect show if you want to escape from whatever monotony or whatever you're experiencing in life. Not to say everyone's life's depressing, but if you just want to sit down and relax and laugh, I think Cromartie High School is a great option. And if you get tired of it, you can turn it off because it's only 10-minute episodes and
there's no overarching story that you'll miss
there's
out
no
on or
overarching
anything.
story. It's 26 episodes. It could be like, oh, I didn't watch the... If you watch the show out of order, it doesn't really matter. Although, I mean, maybe some characters showing up, it might mess with your perception of the show. But in general, it's like, it's my kind of show where I can just turn it on and I can watch it and just relax.
It's good for some giggles.
It's good for some giggles, definitely. But I think if anyone else watches Cromartie High School, I think they would find that it's interesting that we picked it to review. I think more so because we want other people to watch it, but there's not a whole lot to say about it because it's good. There are no real bad moments. There's no things that stuck out as particularly profound, but it's just a really good show. And even just, even though it has no sway in the particularly amazing or the particularly awful, it's still enjoyable, in my opinion.
Oh, definitely. I would completely
and
agree.
worth reviewing for that reason.
I agree.
Yeah. And it's just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I highly recommend.
Me too. So I think that's about it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening. And if you would give a like or a comment or a subscribe if you so desire, then we would very much appreciate it. Feedback is most welcome. So
Indeed.
This has been Discount Ramblepants with Early Bird Anime.
And remember, making friends is something the silly, powerless, foolish masses do to seek emotional support. Good night. Or goodbye. Or wherever you are in this time zone. Or any time zone. I'm gonna leave now.
Ta-ta.
Bye.